Okay, so I suppose the overview then is I've told you what Arc Stories is all about. You know what Arc Space is about. You know what Design Studio. So we're not really going to do much of an introduction. Like I say, I'll film something separately and cut it in.
Cool.
But I will introduce you as Lissie Hollis, aka Lissie. Lissie Arts.
No one really calls me Lissie.
I know. I've learnt the.
So sometimes I chop and change, and I call people. I say, yeah, I'm Lissie, and then people know me as two different names. So I must be confusing people.
I resisted it for a while because I've known you for probably like 8 years.
8 years, yeah.
And obviously you were Lissie at FEA.
I was, yeah.
And then these guys started referring to you as Lissie, and I was like, no, I'm going to resist. And then
you can if you like.
No, it's obviously your preference.
I feel like it was a bit more formal, you know.
Yeah.
From when I was in the corporate world.
In the corp, environment.
So no identity.
Exactly that, and you've moved into a new identity, and you've adopted Lissie as a more
casual now.
Lissie Arts as well.
Exactly, that's my brand. My name's my brand.
That's perfect. So, I mean, with that then, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of what it is you do right now?
Well, you sent me the questions, and that's the first one I read, obviously, and I was like, that's the question that I actually never know how to answer. And I meet people, and I have so many different answers because it's easy when you say, I'm an architect, I'm a lawyer, blah blah blah. The easy one I come up with is I'm an artist or I'm a designer, but it doesn't really answer the question, I guess. I was trying to come up with one phrase that you could sum up what I do, and I suppose I'm like an entrepreneur who works with art and design at events.
I like it.
Do you think that summarised it?
It's very summarised, and it gives you the platform to then add detail here and there.
Yeah.
What would you, I suppose, just to pry for a bit more detail, what is like the main focus of the art right now?
The main thing that I'm kind of making my money from is live painting, and then that kind of branches off into other areas at events. So what I'll do is I'm really nervous just because of the cameras.
Ignore the cameras.
Like I can have this conversation with you, but as soon as the cameras are on, I'm like, oh.
Try not to look at them. They're not even there.
You should put little blankets in.
Yeah, just put silhouettes around them.
Yeah, so live painting is you go to an event and most of the time it's weddings, and you'll paint like the bride and groom, or you'll paint the guests. Sometimes we do bigger scale things, if it's like a corporate event or something like that. It's kind of become a trend in the wedding industry, and I think I latched onto that trend kind of just at the beginning, which is a good time, and it's kind of taken off now, and I get to travel all around the country and sometimes Europe and that kind of thing to go to events. It's really cool.
Very exciting to see like the application of the art as well and how it's evolved over time. Mm-hmm. Obviously at the very beginning I remember when you were sort of testing the artwork and it was quite small scale, and now it's sort of growing, the styles matured. I started off
doing it on the sideline of my other jobs, so it was always sort of doing little illustrations, little projects, but it was always in my mind that when I graduated, actually I always knew that I wanted to set something up on my own, and I had these skills as an artist that got lost in doing my degree in architecture, where you're kind of going towards more computer-based learning and that kind of thing. So I always kept that going throughout my career, and then I was able to kind of make the switch, ditch the corporate job and carry on with my event stuff and art.
Well, that actually covered the next question, which was describe your journey. How do you get into this role? I mean, you've sort of...
I can go back a little bit more.
Well, you've given us an overview there, but maybe just sort of broadly, like, how did you get to be in this position where you've got your own company and you're doing your own art as a passion,
as far back would you like me to go?
Well, let's start
People
with
always ask me that. How did you get into this? And I'm like, do you want me to?
Well, we will get into it a little bit further on. Maybe just like an overview of like, okay, well, I trained for this. I did university, I did this, and then I did this, and bizarrely ended up here. So it's just that from university maybe, or from that.
Yeah, from university I studied architecture, as you know, and then got my first sort of job in architecture, which is where we met. Mm-hmm. And from there, like I said, I'd always kept that sideline going. And I think it came from when I was doing architecture. I realised, I've not painted for years, because I was concentrating on the degree. So after I graduated, I tried to come back to it with little projects, and grew it with little projects on the side with my business. And maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was starting to actually make me proper money.
Oh, it helps, of course, doesn't it, to have the money and to be able to like sustain your life with your work. Again, you've sort of jumped into the next question, which is good. So it's saying, it's sort of like, when did you decide that you wanted to pursue this? And I suppose the answer to that then is, at some point whilst you were doing the architecture, you were like, this isn't the environment for me, I need to do something which is more aligned to my interest, perhaps? I mean,
yeah, I think I always knew. I think I'm probably going to skip to all your other questions with answering.
No, I like it. No, you say you've not memorised it, but I'm impressed.
I think the lucky thing with my upbringing is I was never put into a box. And nobody ever said, we want you to be this. And we have this expectation. I didn't have any of that. And I was always allowed to, if I wanted to pursue a creative project, it was always very encouraged, and I was just left to have a go at it. So I knew that I could never be in that box. And it just, surrounding by my peers who, even at university and working in office jobs, I just saw the difference in thinking. Like, this is the box, this is the path you follow. And it just never was that for me. I always knew that I could do lots of different things at different times. So when did it start? I just always...
You always thought that, actually...
I don't have an answer, I don't know. Maybe it was just always there.
Always. I mean, it probably was as well. I mean, I suppose the critical thing there then, as you say, is it wasn't forced, that there wasn't a kind of a template forced upon you. You went through the architectural education, but you knew that actually that wasn't the only direction. That was just kind of a certain skill set which was maturing, and it wasn't like the only skill set that you wanted to engage with. Yeah, perhaps I'm exaggerating a little. Perhaps there was a lot of from school, from university, it was very jammed into you that there's a path, and it wasn't that nobody said to go off the path. I don't think anyone knew you could go off the path. Like, even the teachers, your lecturers, I don't think they knew, because they had never come off the path. That's a really good point, actually, isn't it? So how would they know? So the people that you surround yourself at school and at university, nobody knows any different. So I guess it was the people that I surrounded myself with outside of that, like, my parents, who just were like, yeah, do this, do whatever you want, makes you happy, go for it. But let's get into that then, because I think, like, obviously we, in many ways, are the product of our environment. So there's like the nature-nurture sort of thing, but when you talk about your sort of childhood, it's where the two features of your life align. So you're like, you've got the biological environment where they're your parents and that's your family, but then you've also got environmental features, like you say, with regard to how they approach education and how they approach the workplace, and all of that feeds into who you are as a person, and what your drive is and what your focus is. And I think what's interesting is, from what you're saying there, is like, you never had that familial pressure to be like, you must do this, or you must look at that, or even just the broad overarching focus that I had when I was growing up was like, do well at school. It was always like, there was always a focus, but it wasn't as prescribed as I know other people have. It sounds like yours was even perhaps less than that. Mine was so much less. They didn't, and almost in a way it's sometimes annoying, they didn't care if I did well, and I did do very well. I did very, very well at school, but it was I pushed myself into it, and all my two other siblings, we all have very different interests, and I was the academic one out of the three of us. But all three of, like, my parents they congratulated us on success, but also it was equal for all of us. So even if I came home with all the best grades, my brother and sister could come home with like the worst grades. But well done, everyone. You did your best. There was. I never got any that much attention from it, if that makes sense. So I don't think it weighted on me too much. I just did it because the more pressure came from school, because they wanted me to do well. But I think that left me with freedom to explore other things, because I wasn't trying to live up to anything, or anything like that. I don't know if I've divulged the question. No, not at all. No, that is. Did you ask a question? That is the answer, really. Well, I mean, let's dig a little bit deeper, because it's interesting to understand the personal as well as the professional and where you've ended up. Because, like, again, the environment you grew up in, not just the family, like the context of your family, but also the place you grew up in, I think is really important. So who you kind of, maybe we start with that, because it sounds like somehow your parents have sort of booked the trend and said, yeah, we're not going to kind of adopt and reflect the narrative that is, you have to focus on this and you have to think about that at that point and that point. You've got to pressurise your children to think about their careers when they're still children. Sounds like your parents have been a bit more like, as long as they're happy and they're, not getting in trouble, then it's absolutely fine. So that's part of the environment. So maybe could you describe like where is home and what does that look like?
I grew up near here, so locally, in a little village. I'd say I had a very privileged upbringing, in the sense that if we did struggle at any point, I wasn't aware of it. So I think that was the freedom to be myself, to explore creativity as a child. If I wanted to pursue something creative, I would go to the shops and buy these big canvases or whatever. That was cool. Yeah, we'll get them, and you can explore those things. So I think I was really lucky in that respect. That I think I'll get a sewing machine. Yeah, you can get one. I don't even need to wait for my birthday. That's a creative thing that would be really good for you. My parents were like, yeah, sure, get it. So I was really, really lucky in that respect. If I wanted to pursue, and I remember making, when I was probably like 11 or 12, I made these little bags out of recycled sweet wrappers or something. I was going to sell them. So I've always had these like little entrepreneurial, creative things. And if I needed anything, I was really lucky. My parents would say, yeah, we support that. So I think they were just happy that I was getting on with stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, keeping busy and
happy in
focused.
my own little world a lot of the time. I've always been doing projects. Even now, it's definitely a thing. My dad always said that they would invite friends around, and it was something when I was really little. I can't even remember doing this, but when you're in primary school kind of thing, and I would just ignore them because I had projects to get on with.
Your friends are just waiting, like they're sat with your parents. Like, is she going to actually come and sit down with us?
My parents would have to play with them because I was too busy doing these projects that I set myself. Yeah, basically, and then I had a very similar experience 2 weekends ago when I invited all my friends around, and I was like, I just have to do this bit of woodwork, and I'll be with you. So
entertain yourselves.
I think it's just always been there. But I don't know what else to say about where I grew up. I went to a very good school. It was really privileged. It was really nice. We didn't struggle. So I don't have too much of a.
I mean that in and of itself is quite important, isn't it? In the sense that there's two sort of dimensions to that. There's like the struggle, which is very visceral and impactful, and positively or negatively, and then there's also the kind of context of you're describing a sort of village environment, and presumably there is a wider community which was perhaps supportive or no, or.
Yeah, we had. I got involved towards the end of school in like an arts festival kind of thing, but I wouldn't say it's like massively. I guess at that age you're a little bit shy and awkward about it, so I don't think I got involved in that till much later.
Yeah.
There's lots of other things when you're that age that you're trying to do to fit in.
Did you do that though? So it sounds like you've never been that person who's like, I'll just do what I need to do to fit in. It's been more like,
Maybe when I was a lot younger. I remember at school I couldn't be bothered with. We're talking like around the age of 16. Again, with ignoring my friends thing, sometimes I couldn't be bothered with the high school drama, and I would just go to the workshop at lunchtime. I'd be like apron on and I'd go collect my lunch with my paintbrush or pencil in my hair or whatever, because I'd be making something in the workshop or I'd be painting. So it's always been there, and it's my happy place.
Where does that come from? Though? So obviously you've got the freedom to do it, but then the agency or the decision making, obviously it sounds like it's probably something you've not massively conscious of. But have you ever thought back and is there an obvious connection point? Like, for example, are your parents quite sort of DIYers or quite self-driven, or grandparents even, or?
My grandparents were very arty. My dad's mum, she had her whole workshop and stuff, but I didn't see her much. And then again, on my mum's side, my mum's mum would like make her own clothes and all that sort of stuff. So there's definitely, it's come from somewhere. But my parents, they never did any DIY, like notoriously just didn't. I don't know where I picked up that skill from.
That's interesting.
Actually, no, that's a lie. My granddad did build his own boat.
Okay, I mean, so that's quite big.
So that side of the family, I think, but I wasn't around them much, and my dad's not inherited that trait.
I love
so
that,
I think it's got to be like just ingrained in me as just need to create things all the time. And I think my parents were busy. So my dad was always, he worked full time, he had his own business, he was doing a million other things like the chair of the school governors, and like he just got himself involved in everything. So I think when I was younger, I must have involved myself in getting busy with things. It's like a kind of way to just entertain myself. I think I had to do a lot of entertaining myself, but I was quite happy.
Well, that's the main thing always, isn't it? I mean, I suppose in that context, would you kind of pick out any key influences that, because again, it's like in the absence of, let's say your dad's busy and he's at one of his chair meetings and your parents are away and you're there busying away, but I suppose it's the, what makes you pick up a sewing machine at whatever age, or what makes you look at, what were your influences growing up, I suppose, is there anything that's kind of
I'm really struggling to like pull back that memory and just be like, that I don't think I have an answer. Like, all I know is that it's in me. It's just in me to like have a vision, have an idea. I think I just like making things. I like transforming spaces and making them feel better. If I try and analyse myself, I don't even know if I'd be making that up though. Like, maybe if my parents weren't that into it, I didn't sometimes like the environment I was in, so I was always trying to transform it. I'd always be like, I must have been a nightmare child, because I'd be not demanding, but I'd be like, can we go to B&Q and get some paint? And I'd be painting my walls. My parents would just let me do anything. They didn't have like...
So don't stop there, Lissie, just the kitchen needs doing as well.
Well, no, I would say, like, I'm fed up with this kitchen, I would paint it, and I would just... And there was never any resistance, so...
Well, that's fine. We can move on from influences. Let's talk about like the lessons along the way. So obviously you've kind of changed career path, or you've channeled your own path through various careers, and it bucks the trend in some respects, particularly when it comes to architecture, because I think there is a general approach, and in my opinion quite wrong, that people will go through part 1, part 2, part 3, and then they'll be like, right, is this for me? And you've already at that point invested, at least 7 years, and all these other issues might have.
Absolutely.
So you've put your life on pause in some respects in the hope that this will resolve and give you focus, but actually what you've done is get part way through that and be like, yeah, cool, well that was all right, but it wasn't what I expected, and you've sidestepped it quite early. So what's probably, if you were to kind of, and it doesn't have to be one, it could be a couple of them, what is the biggest lesson that you would say you've kind of taken from that process?
That quitting was the best decision I ever made. And I think as someone who was very academic, at school, I feel uncomfortable saying it, I got the best grades, and then you go to university and you're expected to follow this path, and I think my decision to study architecture was mainly because I was academic and I knew I wanted to do something creative because it was just my passion. I was always, like I said, being creative. But it needed to be something with a title, Other people were going to go study medicine or law, one of those degrees. So I chose architecture because I guess my identity at that time of my life was so attached to the fact that I was academically successful.
But also creative.
But I don't even know, like the creative side of it was just like, at that age, when you're 18, you get all your grades. And all the schools talk about is university, blah, blah, blah. you're thought a bit less of if you're studying those creative things. You thought that's something that people without intelligence, without academic success, take and study.
For sure.
So I continued with that path, and I continued with a degree. And the degree was hard. It was really, really hard, as you're probably aware.
All too aware.
It was really hard, and they only ever talk about one thing and one path. I don't remember any discussion about being able to do anything else. Maybe it would have been different if I'd have studied a creative course, like textiles or fine art or something. Although I'm not convinced it would have been either.
I don't know, and I don't know if it's changed. Obviously, I don't really have many interfaces with school other than sort of younger family members, but the idea of making decisions in year 9 and again in year like first year or to go to college and these are still encouraged as being like moments where it's a compulsory point to narrow down the focus to a point where you're selecting a degree, and with architecture particularly it's like, well, you're not selecting a degree, you're selecting in a profession, and you're almost saying what I did in my mind just to kind of get through that. I was like, cool, that's 7 years, and I'm almost blinkered now. I'm looking 7 years ahead at all points, and there's, like you say, there's no point there where you sit down with a tutor at any of the years, and there's plenty of gateways where you could and opportunities, but they never say, oh yeah, maybe consider this, or there's another option here, or there's this. Or
they don't know those options exist.
No,
that's why.
But I think you're right. What you said at the beginning is right. It's like the teachers teach you what they know, and they don't know anything different than the path, and the path is very much like, can I quantify it? And I remember exactly what you're describing there, like being academic at school and having a sort of creative drive and going through one of their little sort of careers matrix and saying like, I quite enjoy maths, and then as soon as you feed some sort of like logical like science, maths or English into creativity, it's like, architect. It's like almost like the default option and there's no sort of micro filter there. It doesn't say architect or technologist, because you're a bit more like that, or maybe you're kind of concept art, or maybe you're good at a games designer or something. So there's no like, well, it wasn't for me at least, it wasn't as detailed or as useful.
I think the list goes on and on and on for what you can do, especially with a degree like that with all those creative skills. I had a thought in my head as you were talking, and it's gone. But
you were also talking. No, that's fine. We'll keep talking. If it comes to you, then bring it back in. But
maybe if it does, I'll just kick you.
Okay, no, I'll cut it back in, and then we'll just pretend that was all.
Okay. Oh, no, I've got it.
Go on, good.
I was just saying that like so much of I think my ego wanted to choose architecture, right? And I remember when I got to the point when I'd done a year or two at the practice we both worked at. I said that we're like some practice that shall not be named.
It's code, we will not be liable for any.
Don't be just so and I made a list. And I kept that list in my drawer, and it was quite funny because I kept adding to it. And it was reasons to quit.
I remember you telling me about this list.
I wish I could find it. I must have kept it. Reasons to quit.
Probably still in the drawer, and people are like adding to it every time.
Yeah, possibly. Reasons not to quit. And my list to quit got so long, and I added quite a lot of things to the reasons to carry on. But when I took a hard look at it, the only reason that was on my list, really, when it came down to it, was so I could tell people that I was an architect.
Yeah.
That was the only reason really that was on my list, and I was like, that is not a good enough reason to continue, because that's like my ego wanting to just, go to where I meet people, I'm an architect, because it holds a lot of prestige and people
outside of the industry.
They make a lot of assumptions about that,
Oh, they do.
Based on that you're intellectual, that you're creative, that you're successful, and I held a lot of my identity around those words with my academic success. So sense. Even now, I still struggle when I introduce myself. Going back to how at the start I didn't know what to call myself, because the easiest thing to say is I'm an artist. But
the stigma which some people hold against.
The assumptions that people make when you say I'm an artist are really tiring actually. And I want that word. That's the only reason I wanted to continue. I wanted that word that meant like I'm doing well. You should be impressed by me. But artist doesn't say that.
Of course, the reality is the flip side of that, though, isn't it? Because architecture and architects, or more specifically, are very underpaid and overworked people in society.
And
people don't know the reality. People just think, oh, you're an architect,
anyone out of the industry I still tell them that, and they go, oh really? What?
I thought they're like lawyers or like,
absolutely.
It's mad because right now you're probably in a much better position than you would ever be as an architect.
I'm probably making 3 or 4 times the amount that I would have if I'd carried on with the track that I'm on now. And one of my favourite things at weddings, because as I go to weddings I meet loads of people and I'm painting in front of them, and they assume I'm not making any money, and they're almost sometimes when they're asking
where's
for
the ball?
Yeah, they do. They ask if they can give me tips. I'm like, really not necessary. Some people like just give it me, and I'm like, I'll give it to charity. Like I don't need this £10. I'm being paid to be here, but be polite. Anyway, and then they ask how much I charge, and I'm always a bit awkward about it, and they're always very shocked because they think I don't earn anything doing this. A lot of people think I'm there for fun. And I'm just doing it because I enjoy coming to people's events and painting them.
It's part of it, of course.
Also, all these things that are just linked to like, we don't think you're earning any money doing this. And one of my favourite things to tell them is, actually I was studying to be an architect, but I stopped because I make about 3 or 4 times as much doing this as I would as an architect.
And you're a lot happier as well.
And they're like, and they're sort of confused.
What do you mean?
I just love that, and especially if, and I get this quite a few times, especially if they've got a young child with them, especially if they're like interested in art. My favourite thing is to say that to the parent or whatever, because I had that privilege of being able to explore what I wanted, but I know that that's not common for so many people. So especially as I go to Asian weddings a lot, so I think in those communities it's pushed a lot more to be the lawyer, the doctor, the architect. So I like to be able to just let them know actually that this is better.
Yeah, 100%.
And can be for others.
It probably is a lot better. It would be a lot better for a lot of people. I mean, it's not just the output of architecture; it's the environment of architecture. And as we experienced in our previous role, the environment can be pretty hostile. It can be pretty dull. It can be pretty kind of uninspiring, and those things, if you are creatively driven and that creativity is almost designed out, what is driving you then? And it's certainly not the money. So I think the thing really is, and what's really good about what you're talking about there is, you are in kind of a micro fashion re-educating society and saying, look, what you think you know isn't the reality, and the more people do that, the better, I think, for everyone, because it's like, why are we as parents or society generally like pigeonhole people into like roles which just aren't compatible? Because probably the same reason you said you studied architecture, and it certainly is in part of why I studied architecture. It's that sort of ego that comes with it of saying, oh, I'm an architect. It feels successful. It feels like a powerful term, but that's the feeling. The reality is very different, and I think more people, if people knew the reality, then the feeling you wouldn't get that. Like if people valued architects for what, if they looked at architects based on the value that society actually assigns them right now, you're going to be people that stigma gets flipped. And equally, if people, I think entrepreneur is a good one, but again, it focuses, in my opinion, quite heavily on commercial success as well. It's not about
very
that.
Broad. I haven't come up with a term for what it is that I do. Maybe I need to invent a new one.
Yeah, it's like a creative. There's something there. I mean,
there's so much that's put on. That's the first question that people ask you when they meet you, isn't it? Oh, so what do you do?
Yeah.
And there's this whole story of your life and your experience and all your hard work and your achievements to that day and everything that you love and you're passionate about. And you've got to put it into one word. I mean, of course, people ask you follow-up questions, but I feel like when people ask you that question and you give them your one-word answer, sometimes I say artist, sometimes I say entrepreneur, sometimes I just come up with whatever I feel like on the day.
Depends on the person.
But then it's the follow-up questions that come from that. I almost feel like, obviously, it's really nice people are trying to get to know me and understand what it is that I do, but I feel like the follow-up questions are more just like, then you're batting off all their misconceptions and their assumptions and their bias.
Yeah, well,
that's what the conversation is for me. So sometimes I can't be bothered to bat off all the bias and assumptions, and then sometimes I'm in more of a feisty mood. I'm actually like, no, this is what it could be, and this is why this assumption might not be quite right, and you might want to rethink it this way. So I definitely think more needs to be funneled down to like kids at an age where they're deciding what they want to do, to show them that there's more than like a job title
100%.
to what they're going to do for the rest of their lives.
And it's maybe you're thinking more broadly outside of the titles. You think, okay, well, do you want to work for yourself or do you want to work within a company? Because that decision is way more important than what job title you're doing. Do you want to be... Because there's obviously a risk and reward with both of those statuses, and some of that. Some people, I think, are perhaps a little bit more... Yeah. It's having the ability to say, well, I've got at least part of my income stabilised. The other part is me just trying to do what I enjoy more. Maybe it's supplementing the day-to-day. I mean, obviously, kind of had the conversation with Jason in the previous episode, and it was we were talking about just doing what makes you happy. And I think there's so much value in that, because why would you, as we have done to some extent, sacrifice years of your life in an unhappy and unfulfilling environment to when we don't have to? And that pressure, I think that's like the ugly side of academic sort of pressure. Is like you go through university, you come out, and then you jump into a role and you think that's what you need because you feel like you've learned about what that is, but it's not the reality.
Yeah, I think it's with architecture, with things like medicine and stories I hear from other friends, is people are so ingrained in what they think it is that you have to follow it, otherwise they get really upset. Because if you don't follow what their idea of, let's say, architect, for example, if you don't follow what their idea and path of an architect is, then it's almost taking away from their value of what they are as a person and an architect. Because you're like, no, that's not how you do it, therefore maybe I'm going to
it's
off on
true.
a tangent with this. How do I make it make sense?
It's fitting the stereotypes, isn't it? And I think you sort of bucked the trend in a sense because you studied architecture, so you went partway down a path which people encourage people. This is more like a highway architecture, and what you've done is found a little sort of side route which is way more appropriate.
Everyone needs a side route.
Everybody needs that, and to have the ability to make the decisions, because the other thing is you get sort of, as we have seen with people we've worked with in the past, it's like I think you get sort of baked into a position, and then the flexibility to pursue your own interests or to make decisions to improve your work life, you're massively restrained.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what Jason was saying earlier about, like he's in the room, from your last episode with him, to do what you love. Actually, someone in my extended family, when I was quite young, said to me, I have to get the phrase right, but you might have to edit this.
I'll edit it. I'll just reduce the amount of pause, and then we'll be straight in there.
What did he say? He said, do what you love, but don't find what you love doing. Don't try and make money out of. Just pause the whole thing whilst I think about what the phrase was.
We need to get this. I want to know what this is. I want to write this down. I'm going to get on a t-shirt straight away.
Basically, he said that you need to find a way of making money out of what you already love. Don't try and find a way to make money and then love it.
That's a good point.
You need to kind of like. So that's what I was kind of doing. I was doing what I love, and I was like, how can I adapt this to make money from it? So. Obviously it doesn't just happen like that. You can kind of
it's a process,
to poke around and experiment with different things, but I'm a true believer if you continue doing what you love, it will insert enough passion in you to figure out how to make a living from it. The universe, or whatever you want to call it, some other force comes in and just gives you opportunities, and if you're willing to take that opportunity and go down that path, then another opportunity will present itself, and it might not look exactly like what it did when you first started out and had the idea. 8 years ago I didn't even know live painting was a thing. I would have never thought, yes, I'm not at school going, I want to be a live painter, and this is how much money I'm going to make. But you just see these little opportunities, and they're glowing, and you're like, that's kind of in the direction of what I like, so I'll go check it out, and then take the next one, and things just evolve and grow, and then before you know it, you're working for yourself and travelling to Italy in a few weeks to paint someone's wedding for more money than you used to make in 2 months at your corporate job.
That's a nice distillation of all of that, isn't it? The comparison there, and it's the lifestyle and the financial reward and all the rest of it. Like the package is way better and way more mapped to you. You're absolutely right. I mean, I used to when I was a teacher at university, I was talking to students about like. Because they would inevitably, as you probably experienced as well, they would look to you for guidance and almost instruction to say, what do I do next? Well, do what you think is right, because in the hard times, if it's your passion which will motivate you and get you out and get you through it. So like, and that that's a scale of a project. But if you explode that up a little bit and we look at it as a scale of a sort of a framework for life, and I think generally if you do what you enjoy doing, then even in the hard times it's not that bad because you enjoy it. Whereas you flip it, it's much harder, isn't it? Which is, I mean, that we're moving into section 3 now, which is expertise. It sounds very formal, that doesn't it? Expertise, section 3, which is motivation. So it's, we touched on that briefly about what the importance of is of let me rephrase that. The importance of motivation in getting to this point, but also what frames the motivation. So what would you say motivates you in your...
I really struggle with that question.
Yeah?
Because I don't know, maybe my answer's too simple.
Not at all.
It's just the love for it. The love for... So because I like creating, what I also like witnessing is what I create kind of working out. So every time I experiment with something new or I try a new opportunity and I go, that opened up another little door, and I really enjoyed that. And so I'll go in the next. I'm just doing the same as what I said. I'll go in the next door and I'll see where that goes. And it's opening up a world of possibilities that I would have never imagined, because you can't see through all those doors when you're at the start. It's enjoying the journey and the growth, and to be able to discover something that you never thought you'd be able to do, even with your own, like, when you have your own business, your self-confidence just, what's the word, it soars. Like
you have to, isn't it?
You have to, because you're not relying on somebody else to say, this is what you're going to do today, and then you're going to them to ask if it's okay, or can I do this, can I do that? You're out there on your own and you have to experiment, and you get burnt a little bit sometimes, and you mess things up, but to see what's possible is really cool. And I've still got many years of doing this to go, and I'm doing things now that I just never would have been able to dream of. So what's possible in the next few years. So if I keep going and I keep opening those doors, I could be doing like something I would have never imagined I'd be able to do sat here now in a few years, and I think that's what motivates me.
I mean, that's a really good answer.
To keep growing and to keep reaching a potential that I never thought I was capable of. Yeah,
so it reflects back in, doesn't it? So you try a few things, and like, as you say, you make some mistakes here and there, you learn from that, but then you'll make some really positive breakthroughs here and there, and that'll boost you, and you'll be like, okay, wow, I can actually do that, fantastic. And then when you're in a good in a good place, you can make positive decisions, and you can grow the business, and you can feel all of that, and like you say, you're then a product of your own success. And I think again, not to sort of fill in the gaps for you there, but for me as well, and I think we come from quite a shared background in that respect, it's not being constrained by your work environment and being able to make decisions, being able to make a mistake, being able to make, some decisions.
Mistakes are really key, aren't they?
Yeah, but learning from it, accepting it, owning it, and building the confidence in your ability to make decisions and to, through that, direct your own life instead of having a director direct it for you. Because not to say there's a right or wrong, because I think some people perhaps do work more effectively when they do have a little bit more of a breakdown and are, don't have to think about the bigger questions. But
it's about that. I don't want to judge anyone, but sometimes I see people and I see their potential, and it's almost like they're in this little cage or this little bottle. Talking to just for example, I went to see my cousins the other weekend, and her husband wanted to start his business, and he was talking to me about it. I see that in you. You're ready to go. You're ready to go. You just have to make the first step, and the first step is the hardest thing ever. It's really the hardest thing. But once you've made all those little steps and you've opened up those little doors, your confidence to step forward increases. So that first step is always the hardest. So it's really, It's almost frustrating when I meet people and they're like, yeah, I'd like to do this one day, and I'm like, one day is now.
Yeah.
Do it now. Make that step.
Yeah, I mean that's it, isn't it? I mean, how you were there. The list describes the days that went by where you didn't make that decision. If you were to give advice to yourself, sort of, when you were in that previous role, what would that be? Would you now say like just stop making the list and just make the decision, or do you think like is there a certain time frame where you think actually it's worth weighing up that and it's worth doing this and thinking about that, or do you think you sort of, because I would say in my situation I probably left it a little bit too longer than I should have done.
You wanted to.
Yeah, but situation and opportunity arises.
I think it depends. I think for me it was the perfect time because I needed that. I needed a bit of time to understand how other people did things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to do what. What's the phrase? If you find out what you don't want to do, then you know what you do want to do.
Yeah,
in a sense, and also just I think there still is a lot of value in working for someone else, especially at that age when you're just graduated, because you do pick up really amazing skills and that help you along, and also the financial struggles, right? You can't just graduate. You need to find somewhere.
Yeah, you got to stabilise first, haven't you?
Not everyone has a pot of money, so. I mean, in an ideal world, I would say everybody works their 9 to 5 corporate job or whatever job you want, really, 3 days a week, and then you use the other 2 to pursue your own entrepreneurial things. That would be like my thing.
Yeah, it's
if I had to redesign the work
time.
world or whatever.
Well, I think even just reducing the amount of time at work. So this idea of a 4-day a week or a 3-day a week. It gives you a little bit more time to think, and I think that was a component missing from my experience in the previous role, was just being almost overwhelmed by the focus of the 9 to 5 and being like, oh God, I can't even think about the next step, even though I know this isn't the right fit. I don't have the energy to think.
Yeah. A lot of people don't even have the energy to quit because that requires
you need to have a plan.
Bit of time and effort.
You need to know what you're quitting and going to.
Absolutely, it's a really scary thing. I think the next generation are kind of waking up to that. There's all these things about not putting 100% into work.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because I think we're at the kind of cusp of that change. Like when we went into the profession, it was still very much like we were massively like the minority of people who were talking about, oh, is this right? Is this right? And you're looking around for like support, and everybody's like, well, I felt that for a very small amount of time, but then I realised that through hard work and not have taken I didn't take it. People would wear this idea of not taking a sick day as a badge of honour, and you're like, well, you've just hurt yourself. Actually, that's self harm, and that's not acceptable. And I think COVID perhaps has accelerated that transition a little bit. But
we've gone back again now after the recent announcements, obviously.
Yeah.
If they come into pass, so
we'll see how that pans out.
Maybe that's a different podcast.
But no, exactly. Maybe there's another series on those kind of things. But no, I mean it's interesting to hear that like alignment and how you go about kind of directing your own life, because as you say, a lot of people they fall into a rhythm, and then that they might have the ambition, but it's untapped, and there's no facility, be it time or cost or what have you, to make that transition from the unhappiness or the instability of what they're currently doing and the other ideas. And sometimes you might make the jump and it might not work, and it's good to have the opportunity to kind of move back and to have the flexibility. So I think what you're saying, that sort of 3-day a week is quite nice, isn't it?
If I had to redesign it, that's what But you know what? Not everybody wants to. Some people, like you said, some people just want to go to work and then be able to come home and have space. I think it just depends on what kind of person you are, and I think maybe it's a bit unfair of me to say I'm frustrated by everyone's potential that I can see that they don't use. Maybe I don't know. Maybe people just don't want to use it, or maybe they do but they're scared. I think it's individual. I like to encourage people not to be scared, and you just got to go for it. maybe that stems from me being left to just go for it as a kid.
It's just carried through.
And maybe
that's the worst thing.
I didn't carry that fear, so I'm able to do that a bit more now.
Fear's the word. There's a lot of people are gripped by fear in those decisions, and not to diminish it, because it's a massive choice to make, isn't it? If you've got like the safety net of employment, and you're like, well, what about self-employment? There's some days, as I'm sure you get, where you wake up as somebody self-employed, you think, where's the next job? Where's the income going to come from? So there's a lot more to think about and a lot more pressure, but then on the flip side, there's also a lot more reward and a lot more, individual.
I think building gradually. Like actually, when you said that, luckily, because I've always worked lots of different jobs, I've always made sure I've had that income. But I don't know if everybody's able to do that. I think I'm just sometimes very high energy, and I can because I've got such a drive for what I do, I've got energy left over for it. Yeah. So I think maybe if you have a real passion for something, and even if you're tired, you can find an hour in your week to to enjoy that and to build something from it, and then that hour a week adds up to if you're able to do that. But for a year, that's 50 hours. So you can chip away at it.
One question I do have for you, actually, and this is I think it'll be useful for everybody to listen to this, but also for me as well, because when we set up ARC, obviously I've always had James and Ewan to sort of bounce ideas off and to share the responsibility of setting up a business and managing that business. Yeah. And if there's ever an issue, I'll speak to one of the guys and we'll resolve that together. So there is a level of sort of co-authorship and support. Who do you go to? Who do you turn to when you get stuck?
I've always been very jealous of people who are business partners, because I don't think I have people that I go to. Obviously, my dad is a really a good person to go to, especially when I started it, and there were all those like little nervous things about taking payments and things that seem tiny and like insignificant, and he would help me with. But then over the past few years, I don't talk to him about it at all, because it's grown into a world that he doesn't really understand much about. He's not really into creative stuff, so I'm a bit alone in it, and I don't have anyone to turn to, and I think I've had to be really confident in myself and my decisions. I do a lot of like research online if I'm really stuck on something. Probably over research things to make sure I'm getting it right. But the one thing that I was always desperate for was a mentor, and particularly I really wanted a female mentor, because in the industry that I was in, architecture, they were all men, right? They were all men, and I would try and talk to them. There was just no understanding, and I never found them. I never found that mentor, and I still like it today, even if it was a business partner or someone. Well,
it's that shared struggle, isn't it? And somebody who you can relate to, but also somebody who can support different aspects. It's that personality as well. I think what we find really useful is that we've got very different personalities.
Absolutely.
It's almost like chalk and cheese. But that's good, because we'll look at the same problem in very different ways, and hopefully, if it's a stressful moment for me, then I've got somebody who will look at it less stressfully, and vice versa. But I suppose with yourself, like you say, you've built up a level of self-confidence which allows you to kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to own that. I made a decision, and that's it. That's where I'm going with it. Yeah. But then, I suppose equally there, you have to kind of balance out that the difference in personalities we have. You have to kind of almost sort of neutralise that a bit and be like, look, level-headed. I can't kind of, because you've got one perspective. So I just find that, I think it's really interesting, but I find it quite challenging.
So I've always toyed with the idea of going back into interiors, and there's a reason, because we're not mentioning that. Well,
yeah, we just
I
skipped
did
over
architecture,
that
but actually I then went into interior design. I forgot to mention that. It's because I know you. You know this, right?
But I do know this.
So
I don't know why I didn't even tease that.
That was the middle bit, right? That was the kind of the glue that went jump, which interiors I found easier. It was a bit more creative. In terms of like being able to get involved with kind of colours and fabrics and those kind of things, more arty things, and you made a bit more money, which was really funny. You were less qualified to make more money, and you did less work.
Yeah, you preach into the converter.
Architects being underpaid, right? So I did that for 3 whatever years. And the reason I wouldn't set up on my own is because there's so much more issues to do with liability, people suing you, clients messing you around, in that industry, that it would put me off definitely to go into that alone, because I don't want to deal with that. It's stressful, and the industry that I'm in is a lot better for that. It's full of creative entrepreneurs and people who are doing it on their own. The service that I offer is a lot more simple. Even if I'm able to charge a lot for it, it's very simple, and so there's less that can go wrong, and less that people can sue you for or have an issue with. So I think I'm lucky in that respect that that industry doesn't lend me to having too many problems. I'm very lucky.
Yeah, so you don't need that conflict resolution internally. It's more just,
so that I don't have that many conflicts. But I think if I was in a different industry, so if I was doing interiors, it would be really, really stressful not to have somebody to go to and to be able to share that burden. And it's one of the main reasons that I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've not really thought about the complexity of the industry specifically, but that's really kind of pertinent to the discussion.
Kind of like, will you do me painting? Yes. I've got a contract.
These are the kind of paintings I would do. Yeah, I want one of those. Great.
Yeah, I've got a contract. People have a lot of respect for me, and I think I choose my clients. If from the get-go they don't have a lot of respect for what I do, they don't quite understand, and I can tell there's going to be like some issues, I'll kind of put them off. So it's a good position to be in. Yeah, so I don't have too many conflicts. But I mean, that's now. I've been doing it for about 5 years. Obviously, I have issues before, but I've kind of, once you've been burnt, then you don't. That's the mistakes you learn. Yeah, you go through it. You learn a better way to cope with it next time, and that's of course you do. With me, it's kind of over communication. A lot of the time, to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
That's good.
Did I do it off your question again?
That was you've answered that fully. Yeah. Move on to the next section then. I mean, we've only got a couple of questions left, really. Okay. I mean, the second to last is we've talked about various industries here, but I think more specific to your role, and taking the idea that you've booked the trend and you've kind of found your own niche, and you've channeled the art and the creativity and your self-direction you've commercialised that really effectively. What advice would you give to somebody who is not necessarily looking for a role the same as yours, but who's actually thinking, listening to this, I think I'm quite arty. Maybe they're even going down the heaven forbid, going down the architectural route, and they're like, I've just got into practice and I just don't relate to this environment. What advice would you give them?
I think I've already touched upon it, but it would be to follow those opportunities. If you have a little idea, like a little niggle in your head that says, I'd be interested in doing that. Go and do it, and then see what comes of that. I'm trying to think of an example, but it might be you might be really into weaving, and you want to, you can't imagine what a career would be from that. But you go to a class and you learn, and then you practice them, and then maybe someone wants to buy them. And once you start kind of following those little opportunities, instead of just shutting them down and coming up with all these thoughts in your head, like, oh no, I shouldn't do this because I've not got the equipment, or I've not got this, or there's no point in doing that, I won't make any money. Or, just ignore all these little thoughts in your head, tell them to shut up, and just go and see. You might drop it eventually, but it might lead you to the next thing that might not be weaving. Why have I come up with weaving? I don't know. It might be.
I like it. I'm just going to make some notes on that and start my weaving business.
It might be something else, like embroidery, and you end up setting up like something else. I think just see where things take you. You don't have to kind of be worried about where you'll end up. Just
you don't have to plan everything. You can just take a step. You can start a class, can do a drawing, you can sell that. Maybe you set up a little Etsy or something, and you gradually build up something which has substance. Little steps
every day or every week. Just try and keep that momentum going, and you'll look back. If you're able to keep that momentum going, you'll go, oh wow, that was really cool. I never would have imagined that I would have been doing that last year.
And
you'll see how quickly things just grow and come together.
Snowballing.
Yeah.
Nice. And finally, where can our listeners and viewers find out more about you and what you do?
Probably on Instagram or TikTok. On TikTok. People are mean to me on TikTok.
Yeah, actually. Just turn the comments off. Can you do that? I'm sorry, I've never used TikTok actually.
I actually leave them on there because it fuels people to comment and I get more engagement. Yeah, you probably find me like
analytics.
Most of my handles are Lissie_Art, and that's where you can.
I will, as part of this, whenever I decide and however I decide to put it out, I'll put all of the links and everything. So
cool.
I suppose people will be able to access it just by clicking on that. But yeah, that's it then. Really, I mean, I hope that's been exciting and enjoyable at least, and not just. No, not at all. No, thank you for indulging my idea of this art stories thing. Like I say, it's early days, but I imagine going forwards